We're going to talk to Virginia. Hello, Virginia. You were on the line. What would you like to talk about today?
Good evening. Am I coming in clearly?
Good evening. Yeah, I can hear you. Absolutely. Please go ahead.
Okay. So I wanted to know that because I understand that both of you guys are atheists. So what made you guys want to become atheists? Or if you have always been atheists, what makes you want to continue to do that?
That's a good question. I didn't want to become an atheist, though, for starters. I wanted to remain a theist. Definitely, 100%. With my whole heart, I wanted to remain a theist, and I tried, and I tried, and I tried, and I tried, and I couldn't. So I don't believe that you make a conscious choice to believe something like this. I don't think that I can just be like, you know what? I actually believe God exists, but I'm going to say I'm an atheist. That's kind of like a nonsense statement. You don't become an atheist until you stop believing God exists, and you can't just actively choose your beliefs. Does that make sense? Just like from a starting point, just a couch where I'm coming from,
Yeah,
Virginia?
I see what you mean.
Yeah, cool. All right. I just disagreed with the framing a little bit. So why did I become an atheist? I became an atheist because I went through some hardships, and as you do, you turn to your religion. I was a Christian. I was an Anglican, actually, at the time. And I turned to my religion because that's what you're kind of taught to do to get through hardship. And I started really kind of delving as deep as I could into it, to try to understand the Bible as best I could, try to understand everything about Scripture and Jesus' messages as best I could. So I decided that I was going to read it cover to cover. Again, this happened to correspond with me also doing a degree in psychology with focus in neuroscience in university. They overlapped. This taking place and what led to my deconversion overlapped. I found as I was reading the Bible, a couple things happened. The two linchpins of my deconversion, it's a much longer story. It would take a really long time to go into. But the two final straws that broke the camel's back for me were that I had a very difficult time reconciling my understanding of morality with everything that I saw God doing in the Bible. I thought that based on everything that I knew about morality, that God seemed to be just overtly immoral in the Bible. And I couldn't square that circle. I couldn't say that he was both the source of morality and also consistently doing immoral things. And the concept of the soul also completely disintegrated for me as I was studying neuroscience simultaneously, because I started to study the brain structure on a cellular level. And I realized that the only way a neuron can fire for me to even have the thought that leads to us having this conversation is for a sodium and a potassium ion threshold to be reached on either side of the cell membrane, and a chemical named ATP be kind of secreted from the mitochondria in the cell in order to open a channel that allows that threshold to reach an equilibrium to create the action potential for a neuron to fire. And I knew that that was a physiological thing that had physiological components that I could point to. And because it had physiological, actual physical components I could point to and identify, and I knew how it happened, that left no room for the soul. And any concept of the soul for me then now had a complete and total interaction problem, because how does a soul move sodium and potassium ions around in my head in order for neurons to fire so that I can have thoughts? That's not feasible. That would be something that was measurable. And we don't see that happening. So the soul fell apart for me. And if I don't have a soul, then I don't go on for eternity. And most of the verbiage in the Bible that pertained to the soul, which is what speaks to most of us, thus became kind of nonsense as well. So those are the two linchpins. It's significantly more robust and nuanced than that, but those are the two big linchpins.
Okay. Some of those are some things that I've heard before from other atheists that I've spoken to. And so I can understand where you're coming from with that. And so, Will, what about you?
Yeah, mine's unfortunately much less interesting. I was raised in quite a secular household, so I didn't have to deconstruct much necessarily, at least actively. so I never considered myself a theist. I grew up being very free and very free to choose what I wanted to believe. I was exposed to a huge amount of religions growing up. If anyone knows, I was raised Unitarian Universalist. So part of that doctrine is like teaching a lot of different religions, a lot of different ideas, pulling from a huge different amount of sources. And so I was never required to believe anything. And so I kind of fell into what I think is like the very natural position of not believing any of the beliefs on offer, because I just didn't, for the same reason I didn't become a Hindu, I didn't become a Christian, and for the same reason I didn't become a Muslim, I didn't become a Zoroastrian or Rastafarian or something like that. Like, it's just these beliefs didn't seem compelling to me, and so I didn't adopt them. Just like every other belief in my life, they didn't seem compelling, and so I didn't adopt them. And then I engaged in a huge amount of apologetics or in counter apologetics with actually people on the line, hilariously. And that's how I got into like talking about atheism, and that kind of made my position on atheism a little more nuanced, a little more epistemically justified. But why I have the position in the first place is almost certainly because my childhood gave me the freedom to have it and not have to do a whole lot of work to not have it, which is what I observe a lot of people doing.
Okay. All right. So your position is kind of just informed of you were never exposed to anything that ever seemed legitimate or of any value to you. And so I can understand that position as well.
Just sufficiently convincing.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, I think lots of things in the Bible are valuable. I just don't think they're sufficiently convincing. There's lots of good poetry in the Bible. But yeah.
Okay. And so, Shannon, going back to what you were saying about one of the things that kind of made you want to start deconstructing your faith was the issue of evil and morality. And you said that you went through some hard times and you didn't feel like the way that God was responding to you was sufficient.
I never said that.
And so,
never said that at all.
Oh.
No. I said I went through hard times, and as you do in hard times, as we're taught to do, I turned to my religion because I was conditioned that when I go through hardship, religion is what I would turn to. So it was a catalyst for me becoming more invested in my faith. And the more invested I became and the more I threw myself into understanding every part of it, the more I realized it made no sense. So it didn't really, my deconversion didn't have anything to do with God not answering me or not supporting me, really at all. Because I was also conditioned to say, when you say a prayer, you get three answers: yes, no, and what was the other one? Like maybe later I have my own plan for you. So I was kind of conditioned to say, like God has a plan. It may not be available to me, but this might be something that makes me stronger in the future. And I just have to have faith that this is his plan. I'd gone through hardships in the past with that disposition. So that him not being there for me is something that you have written into the story I just told you. It wasn't a part of it. What I said was that I went through hardships, and that was the catalyst for me to start throwing myself more into understanding the faith. And that process of trying to understand it more deeply is what caused it to all fall apart, because I realized it didn't make sense under scrutiny.
Oh, okay. I guess I was jumping ahead because I was saying that like you went through this hardship, and then like you said, it forced you to want to dig deeper into your faith. But then once you started digging deeper, that's where you felt like this like you said, doesn't make any sense, and that's where it kind of fell apart for you.
Yeah.
And so, what are some of the things that you looked at that you were like, okay, this doesn't make sense, and that you felt like were contradictions in the Bible or with God as his character?
Oh, well, it wasn't even just God and his character. There was lots of things. I found inconsistencies kind of right from jump. The first time I read through Genesis, it struck me as strange that God put people on the earth, and then I turned the page and he did it again. Right? Like, so when you read Genesis, like actually read it straight through, not a curated version that says, like a study Bible, it says read this passage and this passage, and then read this passage and this passage. When you actually just read it like straight all the way across, you realize that there's overlapping stories. It tells the same stories twice a lot of the time in Genesis. The same thing happens with Noah, for example. and there's inconsistencies within the stories, like just starting from jump. So those inconsistencies like kind of let off a flag for me, and I looked more into how the Bible was constructed and was introduced to things like the documentary hypothesis recently that kind of help explain it better. If it was the divine and inspired word of God, those inconsistencies wouldn't happen. They wouldn't have to reiterate the same story a different way with different details. So that was one of the things just immediately that jumped out of me. When it comes to a moral perspective, the story of Jephthah, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the story of Jephthah. I thought it was strange that God would be so against abortion, and I've consistently heard that there was no human sacrifice. But Jephthah pleaded with God that if he could win this battle, he would sacrifice the first thing that walked out of his home. When he got back to his home, the first thing that walked out of his home was his daughter, and he killed her. And God was like, that's good, perfect, that's what I wanted. There's Numbers, the test for the unfaithful wife, where if a woman is just suspected of cheating on her husband while her husband's away, her husband can take her to the tabernacle and they can make her drink a tonic of dirt water. And if she has been unfaithful, then God will just and became pregnant, God will sterilize her and end the pregnancy in that moment, so that she's a plague upon the land. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. All of the slavery is pretty bad. I found it very, very disheartening that in my journeys through the church, no one had ever kind of brought up all the rules about the fact that you can beat a slave within an inch of their life, and that's fine. But if the slave dies, then there's punishment, and there's the rules around rape. Like if a woman doesn't scream, then she's, basically that's like saying that she liked it. There's the fact that the women are perceived as property throughout the entirety of the Bible, and God is dictating these laws through his church to pass down to the people, and he never thought once to say, hey, men don't own women, and if a man rapes a woman, it's not a crime against her father, and it's a crime against her, and the punishment for the man shouldn't be marrying the woman he raped and having to pay the father for her because she's ruined now. That seems a little fucked up, but that's one of the rules that God seemed to think that was fine. There's the inconsistencies between the genealogies in the script, in the Gospels. There's the different of Jesus and how they both derive his birth from David through his father, when his father wasn't actually his father, but they didn't understand genetics back then. So it would make sense that they see, since, the mother is basically worthless because she's a piece of property, that they would want to, in a patriarchal society, derive those genealogies through the father. There's the fact that most of Christianity, as I started reading through the New Testament, was derived from the teachings more so of Paul than Jesus. It seemed like Paul just kind of came on the scene and defined what Christianity was, and that's what we all just went with, more so even than the Gospels and the Old Testament. Just a guy, just a dude, just some dude said, I saw Jesus, and happened to be literate and had the wherewithal to go around and say, I know what's up, I'm in charge here. And because he was literate and happened to write it down, that is what stuck, because we don't have a lot of the rest of the writings. Most of the people that follow Jesus around would have been completely illiterate. And even if they were literate, the Gospels that we have, the fragments are written in Koine Greek, and they would have been illiterate Hebrews. So it's a bridge too far for me to think that not only were they literate, but they were literate and bilingual and literate in two languages. They're all anonymous. They copy each other. There's a synoptic problem. The synoptic problem is that basically the Gospels are in the wrong order. It goes Mark, Matthew, not Matthew, Mark, like it is in the Bible. And if you look at them, they're copying each other like almost verbatim, and in fact verbatim in like 60%. So you can see the progression of the myth over time. If you look at Matthew, if you believe that Matthew wrote Matthew, it's wild to think that Matthew would, in the third person, describe using Mark's wording verbatim how he met Jesus. That seems crazy to me when you read it. That would be like me copying somebody else's telling about how they saw me meet my boyfriend verbatim and still keeping it in the third person. Like, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Like, I don't know how much time you have. There's a lot.
Okay. So if you were to get answers to those, would you be interested in converting?
I've tried to stay a Christian. There are no answers to those. Really, like if you could prove to me Christianity was true, I would convert because I want to believe true
Okay.
things.
Okay. And so if someone could give you some of the answers to the alleged contradictions that you just posed, you would believe. Is that what you're saying?
If somebody
Those
gave
aren't
me
questions, though.
viable answers, and that's a lot of, I'm not really sure what you're angling at here. So are you suggesting there are answers that I've not been exposed to? Because I may be the wrong tree to bark up because I've been at this for about 7 years and have spoken to many a biblical scholar, philosopher, theologian, and numerous apologists face to face on a multitude of these issues. And I found most of those answers insufficient. If you, Virginia, are the one today that is going to not just answer one, but all of those problems, plus the myriad other problems that I didn't have time to list, and you can demonstrate that it's true that these things actually happen. I'm not sure how you would do that because historically it doesn't really pan out. Kind of a just so story.
Well, I can defend what they're saying from the Bible because what I found, I've done a lot of research when it comes to the supposed contradictions in the Bible, and what I find is that they come from one of three problems. They come from either reading a false translation, and so there are contradictions in the fake Bibles, or a misunderstanding of the new man versus the old man, or just someone intentionally misreading something. And I'm not saying that you're doing that. I'm just saying that, I might talk with a Muslim or something, or I might talk with a Hebrew Israelite, and they intentionally read a verse out of context or misconstrue it to make it seem like the Bible's contradicting when it's not. And so between those three reasons, I found that all the contradictions are easily explainable.
All the contradictions in the Bible end to end are easily explainable. Okay. How many people were at Jesus' tomb?
I don't know that one off the top of my head, but to go in kind
you
of
don't
the
know
order
all
that
of
you
the
were listing them.
contradictions, so you don't know the explanations for all of them. You just told me that all of the contradictions are easily explainable. I just presented you with one and you're not familiar with it. So that means that you're just accepting that you believe that they're all easily explainable because you don't know all of them. If you knew all of them, when I said how many people were at Jesus' tomb, you would have said, I've looked into that because I've looked into all of them. I know that there is an explanation, and I know the explanation because it fits into one of these three reasons in the criteria that you set out. So what it sounds like is you have a framework that seems satisfying to you, but you haven't actually applied it to all of the contradictions because there's one immediately that's a well-known one that you weren't even aware of.
Well, no, I've heard of it. I'm aware of it, but I don't have all the answers off the top of my head.
How did you explain it away?
I can pull it up. And
how did you explain it away? Because you must have come across it because you said that people are either misinterpreting and you've answered all of them. So how did you square that circle? How did you reconcile?
Well, I didn't say that I personally have answered all of them, but what I do know,
you haven't exposed yourself to all of the contradictions.
Are.
You're just satisfied that that it's okay and that they're all reconcilable, but you haven't actually looked into them. I have.
Well, I've looked into a large. I've looked into a large number of them, and all the ones that I've.
Yeah, I did bring up one of the ones that you have a ready-made answer for. Go ahead. Well,
yeah,
sorry.
It also only takes one. Just to be really clear, if we're genuinely trying to address what is true and what is the most compelling account of reality, I can give hundreds of accounts of reality that have zero contradictions in them. That's really stupidly easy for me to do as a living, breathing human being who can recount reality. But what is the most important book in your world, in your life, should be able to do what I can do every single day. So it only takes one contradiction for it to be actually notably less compelling of a response. This is why when we talk to a lot of apologists, it feels like motivated reasoning. Because if it wasn't motivated reasoning, you would say, yep, I don't know the answer to that contradiction. I'm going to stop being a theist until I do. My belief does not hold up to scrutiny. let's talk about it. Let's see if genuinely the best explanation of this is one of the three options. But also, there's no translation issue with the how many people were by the tomb or by Jesus' tomb. Like that's the correct answer. The apologists don't have a sufficient answer to this, and all the a huge amount of the issues that Shannon brought up. The apologists have some kind of linguistic trickery that is played with some of the contradictions that you could maybe argue in some compelling manner, right? But the synoptic issue is indisputable. Why do they tell the same story 4 times differently? That's all the 4 gospels. It just doesn't really make sense
Or
if you're
verbatim the
recounting
same.
reality. Exactly.
Yeah.
Why are we doing this?
And
what is the practice for?
And we're focusing on contradictions as though I said that was my primary problem. It wasn't. It was morality and the soul. And I brought up the synoptic problem, which has nothing to do with contradictions. It's actually quite the contrary. It's the exact opposite. The synoptic problem is the fact that the gospels each copy each other verbatim, which means that they're not unique firsthand accounts. If they were unique firsthand accounts, then they wouldn't have to copy somebody else's unique firsthand account verbatim. They would have their own from their own perspective. And that's not a contradiction. So the contradictions aren't the only problem. They are a problem, but they aren't the only problem.
It's a rhetorical critique for what it claims to be.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. So I guess pivoting from the contradictions. So you said that an issue is morality. And then you also said that you had your own idea of morality, and then when you read the Bible, you felt like God was doing things wrong. But if God is almighty, then wouldn't whatever he does be right?
Yeah, so that's prescriptivism, which is a problem in your framework. So the idea that I had of morality actually wasn't mine. Mine's vastly improved in its framework since my deconversion, because I've actually looked into morality in a far more robust fashion. The morality framework that I was operating from was essentially one that was given to me by the church, one that I was kind of like born into subscribing to through the indoctrination in the church. My problem was that the moral framework that I was presented with and had adopted as a member of that church congregation contradicted with the Bible, what God was doing in the Bible. So that's what I was saying. Now, when it comes to if God doesn't it mean that it's definitionally good? Then we have a problem with what a moral framework is. Because one day God genocides firstborn sons, and another day he's walking around the earth as Jesus and saying, whoever harms one of these little ones, right? So that's a contradiction, right? Because if Jesus is God, then, and this is one of the things that I do now and did a little bit back then. If you believe in the Trinity, then you believe Jesus is God, which means that you have to believe Jesus is the God of the Old Testament, right? So I picture in my head Jesus drowning everyone on earth. Jesus saying, cast these babies against the rocks. Jesus saying, kill your daughter. Jesus tricking Abraham into thinking, which is psychological torture, which is a type of torture, thinking that he's going to need to kill his son, and then just saying, psych, that was a test. Jesus, just destroying, Jesus killing all of the firstborn sons of Egypt. Those are all things that God did. And if Jesus' message of morality is supposed to be the consistent message of morality that we're all supposed to adhere to, and Jesus is God, and God is immutable and unchangeable, then it's a contradiction and an inconsistency that morality would in one instance be right and in another instance be wrong. And if what you're saying is, well, whatever God does is definitionally moral, then we don't have an operational framework from which we can reference. It's broken because it's subject to his whim. It's entirely subjective.
Well, we do have a framework because he gives us orders, he gives us laws by which we should obey, but
does he not have to obey them?
To whatever he said. What do you say?
Does he not have to obey his own laws that he gives us?
Well, yeah, he obeys them because, one of the.
Am I allowed to commit a genocide? Am I allowed to kill my son if I think even though I created him, he's not, really up to snuff, and he's really pissing me off. And I think I can do better, and I'm just going to start over again. Can I do that? Because God can. He did it.
He also ordered other people to do it.
When exactly?
To be really clear, it's not just God acting himself. Yeah, he ordered the Israelites to genocide the Amaleks, or the children of Amalek. So not only did he give orders to people to not kill, right? That's a big one. But then he later ordered those exact same people to kill man and women, young and old. So how do you reconcile that? Are you just really sad you weren't born an Israelite so you can commit genocide against children of Amalek?
Well, those people were wicked. And so are you saying that people who are wicked should have the right to live regardless?
The children were wicked?
Can children not be wicked?
Can a 2-year-old be wicked enough to kill? No. See, I have the moral standing to say that because, my moral standing doesn't come from an arbitrary mythological book. You seem to have to accept that killing a toddler because of who their father is, right? The toddler had done nothing. It was the fact that they were a child of Amalek, and they were enemies of the Israelites. You have to accept on your moral framework that killing a toddler due to who their parents are, and due to what tribe they are and what ethnicity they are, is acceptable. And even God himself, when stating general rules, seems to contradict that. So, which command of God are you going to accept?
Well, you made an assumption that your basis of morality is your own, and that is something that you created.
No, I asked a direct question.
On your own.
I said God said that's incorrect. I said God said this here. God said this here. I'm asking you if which of those is acceptable, / are either of them acceptable? Is it ever acceptable to kill a toddler because of what their parents did? Is that your belief due to your religion?
Well, see, you're assuming that they were toddlers. It doesn't say that.
It says young and old. Do you think no babies existed in this tribe?
It's possible, but it doesn't say that.
Okay, I think it's next to impossible that they didn't. When documented, there were a few thousand of them. And the Israelites were told to kill all of them, young and old, man and woman. Right? And in those times, man and women were typically considered as innocent as children. Misogynistically, but let's just use your God's standard, Your God's famously not the most non-sexist. So, what they meant was let's kill everyone, even if they're innocent as a person. It's their bloodline. It's the blood of Amalek that is tainting them. Do you think that that is an acceptable thing to do? Is that your genuine belief? Do you genuinely hold that?
If God
if you saw a child of Amalek today, right now, would you feel justified stoning them?
So what you just said was, if God said that we should commit a race-based genocide, you would be like, yep. That is the consequence of this belief system. Listen to yourself for a second. You just said, if God said you guys should go commit a race-based genocide, your answer would be, yes, sir. And we're the ones with a problem. Well, yeah, because
I also think everyone who's ever committed a genocide think God told them to do it.
Genocide is okay.
By the way, that's you have in common every other committer of a genocide. We have in common not that.
You just hit the consequences of your actions and you didn't even register it.
Well, because whatever God does is in fact just.
God is a problem.
And so I'm not so arrogant as to think that I legislate morality based off what I think. I go off of what God says.
I am arrogant enough to say unilaterally that I don't give a shit what God says. There's nobody should be committing a race-based genocide. That's a privilege that I have as an atheist that you do not have as a theist.
And I'm arrogant enough to believe that I don't know better.
That shows a disparity in belief system that kind of tilts the scales in my favor. What?
Oh, so neither of you are pro-choice?
I'm a gay man, and even my neck couldn't take
do you have
that
a goalpost
like,
in your hand, and how fast are you running with it? Like, that was
I mean,
goalpost shifting like
can't
I've
see the
never
parallels
seen.
between that?
You just
Since the fuck when?
no. Between race-based, active
there's
race-based
no parallel
genocide
between
and
the genocide of
exercising
the
bodily
unborn?
autonomy, you need to just sit with the fact that you just said in front of God, America, and the entire internet that you would be okay with a race-based genocide under a specific set of circumstances. No, I understand to you those
And the
circumstances are
person who's
God told
condemning
you.
me is someone who believes in the genocide of the unborn. Is that not hypocritical?
my-
Genocide of the
You're
unborn is a
merciful
nonsense
Jesus.
statement. You don't know what genocide means. Genocide of the unborn is a nonsense statement. That's like saying cancer's a genocide of elderly people. It's a nonsense statement.
Oh,
But if you want to
so
say
you, as
abortion
someone who's
bad,
already
and you want to
born,
have
has
that
the right.
discussion, but that's just not what
So
genocide
you,
means.
as someone who's already
right?
born, you have the right to decide who's human and who's not. Is that what you're saying?
But once again, this is
No,
just
you're
not
the one who's
born
saying you
and
have the
not
right to
human?
decide who's human and who's not. I'm not the one committing any genocides on a.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Also, talk about arrogance.
Well,
right?
you're
Like,
supporting a real genocide.
Oh, you're
Okay,
getting,
wait.
You're getting,
All you've done
this
is
is
say that I'm
hilarious.
supporting a
You don't know
hypothetical
what
one.
genocide means. You're just using this word because you're like genocide bad, therefore genocide abortion, right? You can say it's murder.
well, then
you can say it's
enlighten me, Will.
widespread murder. You can say it's really bad. That's just not what the word means.
Then enlighten me.
Okay, I think it's really, really, really deeply irresponsible to use a word like this, right? It's not my responsibility to educate you on, like, when you're extraordinarily offensive, but genocide does not apply to age. It applies to race, ethnicity, religious group, or national group. So on one of those 4 characteristics can you commit a genocide. So if I said all the, like in history, it's been all the Armenians, all the Christians in this area, right, in whole or in part. Abortion does not do that, right? Some whack-ass pro-lifers say that it's a genocide against, African Americans, which is, if you know the history of pro-life movement, fucking laughable, considering actually the pro-life movement is the one that originated from racism. But anyway, so they try that. If that's the argument you want to have, let's have that argument, because that will be funnily wrong. But if you're just saying abortion, widespread killing, therefore genocide, right, you're disrespecting the huge amount of actual genocides that actually exist in the world today and in the history past.
Okay, well, since you refuse to actually define it, I pulled up the actual definition of it. And the definition of genocide is, and I quote, no, because you were being disingenuous, so I'm going to actually pull up the definition. And it says that the deliberate killing of a large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group with the aim of destroying that nation or group. And so what abortion is, by definition, is the intentional killing of the unborn. Fetuses are human beings. They have human rights.
Is there a nation of unborn? Is there an ethnicity of unborn?
There are
Do you know what these words mean?
Does it say a people group, sir?
Read over it. You said I was being disingenuous. Read your sentence.
It said a group. It literally says the deliberate killing of a large number of people. It says a group. It says or group.
No,
that's what the definition
that
says.
Sentence. I'm dyslexic here, right? And I can read that sentence and know what's being said. And read it to me slowly.
No, you don't.
Read it to me slowly then.
The deliberate killing of a large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group with the aim of destroying that nation or group.
Is
that slow enough for you?
Okay. Does it have the aim of destroying any particular nation or ethnic group?
It has the particular aim of destroying the group of people known as the unborn.
Is that a national or ethnic group? Is that a national or ethnic group? I don't know how many circles we have to go in, but I can run, baby. I'm a track star. Are fetuses a nation or ethnicity?
You are prejudiced against the unborn.
Are you saying there is a nation of fetuses?
They are a people group.
Are they a nation?
I never said they were a nation.
Are they just answer my question. Are they a nation?
No.
Are they an ethnicity?
No.
So by your definition of attacking them for that characteristic, it can be bad, it can be gross, right? Like, I wouldn't like attacking all gingers. That's not a good thing to do, but it wouldn't be genocide. Because that's just not what the word means.
Yes, it would. Are you serious right now?
It has to do with gingers are not an ethnicity. Gingers are not a nationality, bro. Just like fetuses are not a nationality and are not an ethnicity. This is just not what the word means. This is just not how you use the word.
If someone went out with the intention to kill people simply because they're gingers, that would be a genocide.
If I said even let's kill all women, that wouldn't be genocide, because it's just not what the word means.
Yeah, you're literally insane. Okay, so that's just objective.
I don't think there's anything literate going on here.
All right, Virginia.
And anyways,
this
the point,
has been fun. I'm going to let you go. We have other calls in the queue. We've been going round and round and round in circles for a while, and I'm not sure that it's getting anywhere, but I hope you call back. Maybe we'll talk again in the future. Have a lovely rest of your day. Goodbye. Holy, we've been on a journey today, Will, you and I. Every call is like, I did not see that coming.
No. You want to talk to me about genocide? Really? Anyway.
She had the artifice of patience, so I was willing to like grant her quarter right up until the moment that she accidentally was faced with the fact that her position justifies genocide. And then that dissonance just went.
Yeah. She's like a toddler on Valium, you know, really patient and calm. And then bam, you're just screwed.
I don't like this anymore.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jimmy Snow, executive producer of The Line, and the rumors are true. Forrest Valkai is, in fact, a hostage in my basement. If you would like to contribute to his freedom one day, you can do so by supporting us over on Patreon or becoming a channel member. There are specific tiers for specific shows or the channel at large. You can also send us super thanks. Those are great. You can like, comment, and subscribe. Also, fudge the algorithm. Go to one of these things. The algorithm doesn't matter. It thinks it knows you better than we do. Better than you do? I know you better. Hank. There's a bunch of people named Hank. I just freaked way out. Okay, go to one of these.